For those who are like, oh no, not this guy again. Oh man. No, amen. Thank you for that. Yeah, and just to echo what Crockett was saying there a moment ago, me and Jennifer, we've been blessed over the last couple years to get to work with small groups and kind of help shepherd that. And so if that's something that you feel led called to, we don't want to keep it just exclusively to a couple of small groups. Our heart is that the body will love coming together so much that, don't feel like it's got to be anything big. It doesn't have to be anything big production. Really it's about people getting together, sharing God's word, and just building on each other. And that's really, that's what the church was founded on, was that people were getting together, that they were worshiping together, they were praising the Lord. And so if there's any way me or Jennifer can help you with that, if that's something you're interested in, by all means, feel free to get with us, and we'd be more than happy to share and build on that. So, all right. So, kind of a quick review, real quick. Sorry for that. Where we were at from last week. Last week we left off with Lot in a destructive decision, and when we left Lot, he was in a pretty bad state of affairs. He had lost his wealth, he had lost his witness. Pretty much he had lost the majority of his family. All he had left was his 2 daughters with him. And he was pretty much running for his life, held up into a cave. So, as we said there, he was in a pretty rough state of affairs there. And during this time, when he is in this cave, something really, what we would look at today would probably, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But it's important when you read biblical context to always try to put it in the context of what's going on. So his 2 daughters essentially take advantage of their father, and they bear children. Children are born through him. Now, it's easy for us to want to judge things sometimes, but understand and look at the situation. These 2 daughters were raised up in Sodom, which was not a great place to be raised up. They're fleeing for their life with their father. As far as they know, the whole world is being destroyed. Because think about it, you're running away, you see the city behind you being destroyed with hellfire and brimstone, you're held up. In that day, women's feeling was, hey, I have to bear children. It is my responsibility to bear children, to carry the line. The world looks like it's coming to an end. We have our father here. We have to carry the line of our father because it looks like there's no one else left. So always remember to put things into context. Not saying it's right, but today, and I want to start with this question here. I give an assignment, and I had one, Mr. Dan back there. But I don't see Mr. Dan and Miss Ashley today. They may be back there in the back. So I asked the question, test out some of my biblical scholars here. What is the connection between Lot and the book of Ruth? Does anyone happen to know? Did anybody study that? Oh man, look at all those hands going up. Everyone across the room is like, oh, I know this one, I know this one. Anybody even want to take a stab at it? Well, that is one good point, and that's close. Anyone else? I know. I'll have to call on Ken Trey because I know he got it one time because we were talking about it. It's been a while back. He may not remember it. Oh, there we go. Moabite. So the eldest daughter of Lot conceived a child, and she named this child Moab. Moab means of the father or from the father. And so if you can go ahead and bring up the picture that I had there. I know we had a little boom earlier, so if everything's working good, we'll use caution, but hey. So yes, that is correct. Ruth is a Moabite. She is a Moabite woman coming from the land of Moab. And so as I was able to try to find this map here, you will see we're going to be talking kind of like this is the time of Judges. This is the time when the children of Israel have pretty much each tribe has kind of had their area. And you'll notice in the little small, kind of to my right, your left there, you'll notice the Moab. There's a little Moab down at the bottom, and you also see Edom. So as the children of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, they moved around, and they were had to go around. And even in Deuteronomy 2:9, it talks about how that Moab, the Lord tells Moses, he says, go around those regions because those have been given. Now, these are also we talked about earlier about how through Abram, lines would be blessed. Well, Edom was Esau. This was his region that the Lord had blessed him with that land. Territory Moab has also been given to Lot. And so the Lord instructs the children of Israel to go around, do not take anything from them. You're not to take their land because that is something that has been given to them from the Lord. So that is a region. So I kind of want to get everybody to understand, and you see Moab there, and then you also see Judah, which we'll be talking about today. So kind of giving you a context of where we're talking about and where the region where this takes place at. So I also want to turn, as we get started in the word here, turn with me to Deuteronomy 25, chapter 25. I want to start in verse 5 there. Excuse me, jump back to chapter 23, verses 3 and 6 here. So, let's talk about something real quick. I want to bring this up because, as we mentioned, so when the children of Israel, when they go around the nation and they are to bypass Edom and around Moab, the Lord tells them to go around, do not touch anything. The Moabites, instead of offering them bread, instead of helping the children of Israel when they seen them along the way coming out of the wilderness, instead they go and hire kind of a soothsayer of Baal of Peor there to come out and to curse the children of Israel because they know and they're hearing about, hey, they're about to go in, they've conquered, they're already starting to win some battles here, they're conquering the land. And so Moab actually goes and hires someone to go and bring them about. So I want to read this real quick because I want you to kind of get this understanding here. And this is the Lord talking to Moses as they're setting up the law, and it says, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Peor, and I'm not going to go into all those Mesopotamia, to curse you. So I want you to understand that. So tuck that away for a moment. We're going to come back to that. But as we're talking about Moab and we're talking about the land, understand, so Lot, this is through his descendants. We're coming around as we get to the book of Ruth. This is probably what I would estimate to be probably around 800 years later from the time Lot went in to Moab and from the time we're going to be talking about in the book of Ruth, because you have the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then the children of Israel go into the land of Egypt for about 430 years. Then they've been through the wilderness. Now they've come through the land of Judges. So that's where we're kind of basing that time frame on. So a lot of times, this isn't instantaneous. This has been years. To put that into context, think about the Americas here, from Christopher Columbus. We've roughly been established, of course there were tribes here originally, but 500 years. So just to give you an idea of the time frame, that's a lot of time. So oftentimes we look at things and we think it's more instantaneous, but you really have to kind of build on some things and kind of put this all together to get the picture of what's happening here. So turn with me to the book of Ruth. Ruth is it's a little book. It's sandwiched in between the book of Judges and the book of Samuel. It's a small book. It's only 4 chapters. We're going to go through a lot of it today. I'm probably just going to kind of give you what's happening, give you the details, and we'll read through some of the scriptures there. Ruth is a very important book, in my opinion, because Ruth leads us out of the time for the children of Israel, leads them out of the time of Judges, and it is kind of like the glue that brings them into the nation of kings. And so as we see that in the book of Ruth here, it seems like a little book, but in my opinion, I think it's one of the best examples of kind of a salvation story that you can really tell when you get into this testimony here. So let's pick up in the book of Ruth. We're going to go through chapter 1. We're going to start with verses 1 and 5 here. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab. He and his wife and his 2 sons, the men of them was Elimelech, the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his sons were Mahlon and you'll have to excuse me some of those names. I can't. Of the Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Judah. And when they went to the country of Moab and remained there, then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab, and the names of one were Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. So they have been there. So Naomi, so understand, could you, if you'll bring the picture back up for me for just a moment there. So sometimes when we read this, to understand, so what we have is there's the region of Judea. So this is where this family is from, Abimelech, him and his family. They're from Judah, which is one of the tribes. It's the nation. It's not the nation yet, but it is the tribe of Judah. And, of course, you can see the region. It's right there, kind of borders right there on the Dead Sea with Moab. So they're having a famine in the land of Judah. He decides, hey, I'm going to pick up my family. We're going to move over there. So kind of and to understand how the tribes are set up, it's kind of the same way we are here. We're Americans. If I were to ask anybody in here to say, well, if you were to go in and I said, well, Mr. Tim, where are you from? And he said, well, I'm an American. I'd be like, well, that doesn't tell me much because we're all saying we're Americans. But if he went in and said, oh, well, I'm from Tennessee, I'm a Tennessean, then we would start to understand, I'm from Weakley County. So when we first read that, that's kind of what we're understanding there, is it's giving an understanding, they're from the tribe of Judah, where they're going to, and it kind of breaks down specifically more of the region. So the Bethlehem is the town, Judah would be the region, and so they moved and left to the country of Moab. So just trying to give that clarity so everybody can understand how we're building here. So that's where they were from. So as they moved into this land, Elimelech, he dies. He passes away. And Naomi, of course, she has 2 sons. They've been there for about 10 years. They end up marrying daughters of Moabite women during this time frame while they're there. They also pass away. As I said, I'm just going to fill in for context a lot of the verses here. And so now they're grieved. And understand, once again, we talked about a moment ago, understanding the context of the time. At this time, okay, it's one thing to be widowed, but at least if you still have sons and you have daughters-in-laws, okay, you still have some hope, right? Because you at least have family that can take care of you, that will, produce heirs. And so you kind of, okay, the family line can continue. But now she also loses both of her sons. In other words, she's a widow woman. She's lost her sons. For her, she's pretty much lost everything, because at this time, it's important to remember, women can't really own, they can't sell property, they can't own property. Even in the tribes in the nation of Israel, with the tribes of the children of Israel, they're still, at this time, they're not able to own and sell property. And so now she has nothing. Okay, so she's left with nothing. So she decides, hey, I'm here in a foreign country. I'm a foreigner. I have nothing. I have no hope. My sons have died. I've lost everything. And so she says, I'm going to go back home. At least there, as a widow, perhaps I can find some relatives. I can find some family who will take me in, and at least I can get some basic shelter and food and have some relatives around me, because now I look at myself and I say, well, I'm too old to marry. I'm too old to bear children. And that's what she tells her daughters-in-laws. She tells them, go back to your families, go back, stay here in your nation, where that way you're young enough, you can remarry. I'm releasing you. I'm not old enough. I'm too old. I can't have children anymore. And even if I could, by the time they were grown up, you're not going to want to marry them. You're going to, And one of her daughters-in-law, she goes back. She says, she kind of goes with her, but then she's like, well, okay, you're right. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to my family. But I want you to see here in the first chapter of Ruth, verse 16, Ruth's response. In verse 16, chapter 1, but Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you or turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. That's a bond right there. Naomi, here, she is a young woman. She could have went back home. She would have found a husband. She would have probably lived comfortably. She could have been in her nation. She would have known her family. But instead, she loved her mother-in-law so much that she said, I have seen your life. I entrust what you have. I'm going to turn from everything I know. My people, my land, my gods. I'm going to turn from them and I'm going to follow you. What did Naomi have to offer? She had nothing. She was widowed. She had no son. She had no money. She had nothing. But yet now at least she has a daughter-in-law who sees her and is following her and loves her and is like, hey, I will go with you. And that is, talk about some love right there. So in chapter 2, I'm just going to kind of explain what happens here. So they get back to Judah. They come back in with, they meet Elimelech, his family. They go in back into that region. They have relatives that greet them. They are excited. Oh, Naomi, oh, so great to see you. We haven't seen you forever. We didn't know if we'd ever get to see you again. Her family welcomes her. They're excited. They're joyful. Her and Ruth as well. And she is, she takes on a name. She calls herself, she said, do not, I'll come back to it. She says, don't call me blessed, because the Lord, I've lost my favor with the Lord. And so, look, I have nothing to be happy for. And I thought I'd mark that, so y'all apologize here for a moment. But anyway, one thing that is important to note about it is she places a name on herself. And maybe that's why the Lord let me lose it, because maybe it's not important. Whatever name you place on yourself, I want you to understand, because sometimes we get up and down, we get sad, we get depressed, we get excited, we get joyful, and we have seasons. And we'll try to put a name on ourselves. The only time she calls herself that and nobody else responds to that. No one else calls her that. Nowhere else in the book of Ruth will you find where Naomi calls herself one thing that anybody responds, or is that name even attached to her. And that's something that's important for us to remember. Sometimes we try to attach names. Sometimes the enemy tries to attach names to ourselves. But yet, her family, the people did not respond, and God is the same way with us. We may try to attach things and say, this is who I am, and you've been. But he says, just hold on. Just hold on. Take a breath. Hold on for a minute. It's going to get better. So she goes back to her home. Her family's, they're excited to see her. They bring her in. They're rejoicing. But remember, they're widows. They have nothing. They have family. They have land and property. But remember, the ladies could not own property. They could not sell it. So even though they had it there in their inheritance, they could do nothing with it. But Ruth says, well, allow me. You have some family, some relatives. Is there somebody here where I can go? And this is the harvest season. It's the barley harvest season. So is there at least some place where I can go and maybe I can gather grain? Now, I don't know if any of y'all are old enough to remember it here, but there was a time when I loved going out as a child and gathering corn. Used to, the combines weren't as efficient. You go to a field now, and it's hard to find some of them sometimes. But as kids, we loved that. Whenever we would see the combines going out in the field, man, we'd take off out in the field. We had fun. My neighbors was like, hey, you're getting this corn for my chickens. We didn't realize at the time we were actually helping collect corn for that. But we'd get out there, and we'd find the corn cobs, and we'd collect them, and we'd play with the grain. It was a great time. Well, this is something similar to that. There would be the edges. You always see the edges in the field where they got some corn cobs left or something. Well, this was something similar. The reapers would go out and harvest, and they would, a lot of times, because of the poor, the needy, they were instructed to intentionally leave a little bit of grain along the edges, drop a little grain here and there for those who are going out. And so Ruth asked, do we have some family where at least I can go and maybe I can gather some of that grain? I can go and I can pick that up. And that way, because we can grind that up, we can make bread, we can have some substance. And so as she goes out, Naomi tells her, says, yes, we have some family here. Boaz, we have a family member there. He's wealthy. He's one of my family members. You can go, and I'm sure he would go. So she goes and she finds this area. She starts collecting grain. She's not trying to make any kind. She is just being very humbly. She is going and just trying to collect grain. And this is probably one of my. We'll start here in chapter 2. It says there was a. Make sure I'm in the right spot here. Yeah. So I'm going to start reading this first part because I do want to. This is one of my favorite parts here. So Ruth in chapter 2 says there was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabite and Naomi, please let me go in the field, glean heads of the grain after him in the sight of may find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. Let me jump down here a little bit. Now to verse 4. Now Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his servants who was in charge of the reaper, whose young woman is this? I like to interpret that as Boaz was going out in his field talking to his workers and then said, whoa, who's that? I mean, here she is. She's a young woman. He's never seen her before. He's never met her. Maybe he's heard about her, but he has not met her. And so that's just kind of my own little interpretation. I like that verse. I like to picture it that way. Because, hey, let's just be real. Let's be human. Hey, who's that? So Boaz, he notices her. And so he goes up and he talks to her. He's asking them about who is this woman, how she's been. They're giving him a report. Hey, this is Ruth. This is Naomi's daughter-in-law. She's been out here working hard all day. She's been faithful. She's been gathering grain. No, she hasn't been a nuisance. She hasn't been a problem. She's just been keeping to herself. She has come in and rested a little bit. And they're just giving Boaz a report about her. And so Boaz goes up and he instructs her, says, hey, you feel free to, you can, my workers have given me a good report. I've heard good things about you. You feel free in my field. You gather grain. He kind of instructs his workers, say, hey, drop a little extra grain over here for them because I know their situation, and just take care of them. If you need water, feel free to drink from our water, but stay around here. Okay, don't go off to other places. You feel free to come here and work and glean in our fields and gather water. Get what you need. And so this is what Ruth does. And so she's able to do that, to be able to get them some substance, some food. And as we move over to chapter 3, so Ruth goes back. She tells Naomi, hey, of course, she walks in the door. She has some grain. She tells her mother-in-law, hey, I met this man. His name is Boaz. He was very nice to me. He allowed me to gather grain. So we have substance. We have some food. And, I kind of find this interesting as we look at this and you really apply it to real life situations. Kind of Naomi, a mother being a mother. Because she hears this and she's like, I know Boaz. Yeah, he's a relative. I know him. He's a nice man. Has some, and can't you see the wheels? I know none of the mothers in here would probably ever do that with their children. Start thinking, hey, you thought about them over. That's a nice young man. He's really nice. Oh, yeah. He's, and then the wheels start turning, thinking about, hey, he's a nice young man. He is a relative. He is someone that we know. So can't you see that? So in chapter 3 here, it says, Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is narrowing barley tonight in the threshing floor. Therefore, verse 3, chapter 3, therefore wash yourself and anoint yourself, put on your best garment, and go down tonight to the threshing floor. Do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies. And you shall go and uncover his feet, lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. And she said to her, all that you say to me, I will do. So here we have a mother-in-law. She's seeking security. Now, this sounds kind of odd to us. Go in, lay down at his feet. To me, I get excited when I read these verses because I know I'm probably like most everybody in here. We don't fully understand the culture. We probably don't fully understand what's going on here. But to me, one thing I understand is I understand the cross. And I understand a life that's being submissive and laid down at the feet. And so to me, I think this starts to become a beautiful picture of being, just like we see at the cross with Jesus, about how our lives are to be submissive. Our lives are to be at the feet of Jesus. And so to me, I think this starts to become a wonderful picture of salvation. But let me give you, I'll come back to that here. So she tells him basically go down there, or tells Naomi tells Ruth to go down there to do this. And so she does that. She goes down there to the winnowing floor. Now, understand the process of making grain. So first of all, you would cut off the heads of the grain. You would go in. Most time they would take them to a storehouse where they had to dry out. So you would have to give it a process. You would let those stalks, basically, you would let them dry out. They would take them, and then once they did that, they would take them to a winnowing floor. They would take them someplace where they had to be crushed. Okay, so a lot of times they would get their animals, they would do it themselves, they would get their children. We could probably do a lot of grain here. I mean, we've got a lot of young kids that need to burn off energy. We could just start putting, they could mash them up, get the wheat berries out of them. So in the process of the wheat stalk, you have to break off to get the wheat berry out of there. This was kind of a winnowing process. They would toss them up in the air. It would kind of let the chaff go away from that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. She goes to this place. It's kind of like a barn area where he's been working. During the night, after he has eaten, after he's had something to drink there, and he is laid down for the night resting. And so this is what she does. She's not trying to throw herself at him. She's not trying to, be a nuisance. She's waiting very patiently. When he goes and after he's done, she goes and she lays down at his feet. So what she is doing in the custom, this is making a proposal to him. Okay? She is saying, I am placing myself under your authority. I know that you are a close relative, and so therefore my husband has passed, and so what I'm doing is I'm laying at your feet in an act of submission, in an act of obedience, fully laying down my life and surrendering everything to you. I'm putting my trust, I'm putting my hope, I'm putting my faith in that you are going to do what's right and that you are going to be the redeemer of the family, of my lineage. Does that sound, come on somebody, does that sound familiar to anybody? If you've ever begun to know about Christianity and know about faith, isn't that what we do? Oh, Lord Jesus, I surrender to you. I put my hope, my faith, my trust, complete submission to you. We get it backwards a lot of times because we say, Jesus, I want you to lay at my feet. Jesus, I want you to be submissive to my will. And I want you to just take care of me and do the things that I want to do. And a lot of times we get that backward. But when we truly start to see and understand the relationship of Jesus, and that's why these verses, this teaching is so important. Because we really don't need to throw out these little books like Ruth. We need to be in the Word. We need to study. We need to grasp what this is saying and what it means and the picture that God is giving us on this. And so here we have a beautiful picture of salvation message. We have a beautiful picture of, it's not just a love story, but it is a salvation story of someone who has nothing, completely hopeless, and then all of a sudden they just lay down, they surrender their life and say, Lord, I give it to you. I put it in your hands. And so here we see that she has laid at the feet of Boaz. He wakes up, he's kind of startled. I think we all would be. If you're just sleeping, middle of the night, and all of a sudden you wake up, your feet are cold, and there's a lady laying at your feet. We would probably all be startled, like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so when he wakes up, he tells her, says, hey, you have done a good thing. You have honored me so much in this because you are putting your trust and your faith in me to do this. And I will do all that you've asked. But there is a relative closer than me. And so first, I have to go make it right with him. I have to go check with him. Now so once again, I want you to understand the culture of what's going on. So now turn with me back to Deuteronomy chapter 25. Mark my book, place there. So Deuteronomy in chapter 25, verse 5. So in the law, when Moses was putting down the law, he made a provision for something such as this. Because family lineage was important. Heritage was important. They did not want, remember, they're talking about the tribes. We're talking about the sons of Israel here, the tribes of Israel, the sons of Judah there. So it's very important that we keep lineage and family. So Moses establishes a law or a regulation on how to deal with someone who has lost everything in their family, to give them hope. So in Deuteronomy 25, verse 5, it says, if brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no sons, the widow of the dead man shall not be married to a stranger outside the family. Her husband's brother shall go unto her, and he shall take her as a wife, and perform the duties of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears will succeed to the name of the dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. Sounds strange to us. It sounds kind of, what is that? But that was the custom because, once again, heritage, family was very important to them, and they did not want the name to be blotted out. So this is where that regulation comes from. This is where the term kinsman redeemer comes from. This is what they are talking about, is that a redeemer would be in the family, in the lineage, and so and to keep him from going and marrying somebody else or going outside the family, This is what they would do so that way they could keep that bloodlines in the family, they could keep the name, and they could keep a loved one. Now, remember, just a little side note here, that in Matthew chapter 22, verses 22 and 23 through 33, I don't have these down. I don't believe I give them to them. So this is just a little side note. Remember when Jesus was being approached by the Sadducees? What did they come up and say? They were trying to disprove the resurrection. This is the law. This is what they were talking about when they go up and they go to Jesus and say, well, whose wife is she? If the man has 7 brothers and all those brothers die, then in the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be? Anybody remember that? Kind of, we got some scholars in here kind of remember that. That's what they're quoting. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the regulation about a kinsman redeemer. So whenever they go and approach Jesus with that, of course, Jesus tells them, says, you're being mistaken. In the life after, we're not going to be given or in marriage here. So, but that is the regulation, just to give you some context of where that comes from and why they were bringing that to Jesus to talk about. So this is what they were talking about. So let's jump over to chapter 4 of the book of Ruth here. We'll get ready to land this plane here for just a moment. So, one of the things that Naomi tells Ruth, she's a young woman, she comes back home, she gets up that morning, she leaves out early, she comes back home, she goes and she tells Naomi, because I'm sure mother-in-law or mama's sitting there, once again, I couldn't see any mom doing this, like, how did it go? How was it? Did you do what I told? What did he say? What did you say? Men are like, oh, we talked. Right? My wife will ask me that sometimes. Like, what did y'all talk about? What did you say? Oh, we talked. And but I'm sure this was a good conversation. Oh, he said this, and I did that, and we talked. And Naomi tells Ruth, says, don't worry about it. I'm pretty sure this man will not rest until he takes care of it. Can't you just see love budding there? Right? Isn't that the way it is when you're in love? Like, oh, I'm not resting. Oh, this, I've got a chance. This one, I love this woman. She's going to be great. Oh, she's a good woman. I know. Men are, when they get something on their mind, oh, they can take care of it. So she tells her, like, don't worry, hon. I'm sure he's not going to rest till he takes care of it. So, picking up in Ruth 4, let's read verse 5 here. Let's go in there. It says, so, backstory here real quick. Boaz goes into town. He meets the relative because he's waiting at the gate because he is a young man on a mission. I'm sitting at the city gate because I know this relative of mine who is a little closer, maybe one relative up ahead here, Mayor, who is closer, he's going to be coming through that way. So I'm staking out the gate, and I'm watching that door because I know when he comes through, I'm going to approach him because I want to take care of this matter. And so sure enough, he sees the relative comes close, comes through to him, and he approaches him. And he tells him, he says, hey, there is a field of Naomi's. Of course, Abimelech, he passed away, needs a redemption. You have the opportunity. You are the closest relative. You have the opportunity to buy that field. And so the relatives at first says, well, sure, I will buy that. So let's pick up here. And then Boaz said, on the day that you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also buy it from Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to perpetuate the name of the dead through the inheritance. And the close relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I ruin my own inheritance. You redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the custom in former times of Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. You got to love this. One man took off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was confirmation in Israel. So, here you go. Let me give you my shoe, right? But hey, it's the custom. And so essentially, as he's talking to this relative, first the relative is willing to purchase it because he thinks, hey, it's just a field. But when he learns that, hey, you're going to have to, because remember, when Naomi's husband passes away, that inheritance moves to the eldest son. So now, basically, this would be Ruth. So this is why he's saying, hey, not only do you have to redeem Naomi's portion, but you will also have to take Ruth as a wife because we need to, the name, the heritage has to be taken care of. Well, understand this custom as well. Because of that, in inheritance rules and regulations, there was, if he were to say, for example, one of the reasons why someone may say, no, I don't want to do this, is because maybe they have not had children yet. So if they were to have the child through Ruth, then that means he would have to, because whether he was the chosen to take care of his estate or not, he would still have to receive a double portion. And so a lot of times, because, hey, I don't want to give out that double portion to somebody who is, hey, this is not really going to be credited as my child. Or maybe they had other children, and they said, hey, this is going to mess up my inheritance that I have to give to them, and so they may choose not to do this. This may be part of the reason. So they had the right. You could do that. Now, if no relatives was to do that, here's another funny custom. The woman who was to be redeemed was to go and take off that man's sandal, take his sandal, and spit in his face, and basically put a curse on him, because he would not redeem the regulations. Hey, this is part of the custom. But the custom of the sandal is because we don't think about that today. It is kind of funny to us, but that's because a sandal was a personal item. It was something that was the scene to them. Nowadays we may have 4 or 5 pairs of shoes, or may have, so we don't think about it. But to them, think about it. You're in a dry desert, rocky area. Shoes are going to be pretty important. I know they are for me. I don't like walking around without shoes on, if I get outside. So a sandal was something important to them, and it was a personal item. And so what the deal was, when you made an exchange like this, as confirmation, you exchanged sandals. That's how you knew the transaction was complete. We have paperwork and we sign stuff now, but that was their signature, was you're signing, I'm giving you a personal item of mine, we're exchanging that. Now, for a time period, that's going to let everybody know in the community, hey, the exchange has been made. And so that's what Boaz does. He goes in, he tells them this, he says, hey, you redeem it, I can't do it, so they exchange you. So this is basically this is the way Boaz is telling the community, hey, I have purchased this property. I have taken Ruth as my wife. I am going to be the redeemer of her. Okay, I will fulfill the vow of, as Moses spoke of, as being a kinsman redeemer for her. And so we see that this is something that to me, it's a beautiful story of redemption, because now, Boaz, and he goes back and he tells Naomi, or tells Ruth, because he has seen her being a virtuous woman. He knows her character. But how does this fit in between the book of Judges and leads us into the nation of Israel? Well, because Ruth, as her and Boaz become husband and wife, there is a son born to Naomi. Naomi gets the credit because she is the mother-in-law and has the past husband as well. And they call his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David, as in reference to King David. Some of you may have heard of him. Probably one of the big figures in the Old Testament. So I'm sure everyone in here is probably at least familiar with King David. Now, remember when we first started talking about Ruth, and we were talking about regulations about the Moabites? They were not allowed to go and worship. They were not allowed into the temple. Some were, some regions were not allowed up to the 10th generations, but it was said of the Moabites, they're not allowed, period. Isn't it ironic that God would use a Moabite woman to come in and help create the line that would produce King David? This is why I love this story so much, and why I say it's probably one of the best testimonies of a salvation story. Because we're not deserving to be in the temple. If it was up to us and our lineage, we'd be cursed forever. We would not be allowed in the throne. We would not be allowed in the lineage of Jesus. We would not be allowed in the lineage of the kingdom. And no matter where you come from, see, the thing is, God doesn't look at where you come from. He doesn't look at what you've done or where you've been. What he looks at is he looks at the heart. What did Ruth tell Naomi? This day, I'm turning away from my family. I'm turning away from my gods, everything I know, and your family will be my family. Your God will be my God. Naomi had the right heart posture, and that's what our Father looks at. He looks at our heart posture, our willingness to surrender, our willingness to lay at His feet, our willingness to come and put our faith and our trust in Him. And that's what I love about the book of Ruth, is the fact of the picture that it paints for us as believers, the love story that it tells for us as the bride of Christ. And so to me, it's just a beautiful, wonderful story. So if I can get our worship team to come up and our prayer team, and if I can get everybody to stand with me. This morning, I want you to really think about that as we worship, as we get ready to close here. Ask yourselves, what land do I need to leave? What family might I have to leave? What little gods am I going to have to get up? Because trust me, we still have them today. Anything that we put before the Lord, anything that we get involved in, and we're like, hey, those can become little gods, things that we worship. What are those do I need to lay down? What do I need to give up? And what do I need to turn to and say, Jesus, I'm laying at your feet. This morning, I need you, Lord. I need your hope. I need your salvation. And so just think about this morning as we finish up talking about this beautiful love story that's sandwiched in between the book of Judges and the book of Solomon.